Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Abby and I like to talk about spooky things. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you 11 TikTok stories about real ghost encounters. If you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, click the subscribe button down below, and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Time. Please check out my Instagram and TikTok where I post special effects makeup over there. And without further ado, let's get right on into the video. Our first TikTok is by the user With Love Malele, and she tells us about a time she was home alone in her haunted apartment as a teenager.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I wanted to preface the story by saying that I grew up with a very spiritual mom. My mom has always believed in ghosts, spirits, paranormal things. In the past, she has used a board. I'm too scared to say these words, by the way. Well, I grew up with my mom taking me to psychics all my life. My mom, when I was a child, was told by several people that I had a gift, that I was born with a gift to see and feel beyond this realm. Essentially, that I had a clairvoyance and a sensitivity to energies. Mind you, this is a gift that I would gladly like to return. So anyway, needless to say that I have had several experiences from when I was a child, and so has my mom. Funny enough, all the women in my mom's side of the family, my younger sister, my 4 aunts, and my mom all have had some kind of experience of their own. Anyway, we lived in apartments growing up all my life. We would move from apartment to apartment several times, and the place that a lot of the activity happened at, we happened to live at for maybe 4 to 5 years. During this time period, I think I was between 13 to 16. When we first moved into this apartment, the neighbors that we had a few doors down that were already living there told us that there was a story of a little girl's presence that basically haunted the apartment complex. There was a pool in the back that was covered. It was filled with dirt or concrete, and the story was that a little girl drowned there. And I just also want to mention that these were not nice apartments. These were very old apartments. And yeah. Oh, another important thing to note is that I had an aunt that lived right next door. There was my apartment and she lived right next door. And I had a little cousin who at the time was around 6 years old. He had an imaginary friend who was a little girl whose name I shall not say because I don't want to bring that energy back. For some reason, most of the activity of the things that happened was in my mom's room. My room was directly across from my mom's room. There was a hallway in between, but they faced each other directly. There was a bathroom. This was upstairs, so there was a bathroom in between the 2 bedrooms, and that was the only bathroom upstairs. The other bathroom was downstairs. So this is an important part of the story. I was always terrified of my mom's room because at this point I had already had other experiences that centered around her room. For example, just a side story, there was this one time where I was taking care of my sister, and all of my family, all of my aunts were at my aunt's house next door. It was a party. It was maybe Thanksgiving or my aunt's birthday, which is also November, and they were all celebrating. And so because my sister was tired, I was tired, I brought her back to the apartment and put her to bed in my mom's room. And when I was looking in the mirror to take off my makeup or just look at myself, I noticed my shadow behind me moved. And so I told myself, okay, well, obviously it's my shadow, so if I move, it's gonna move. And something about it just scared me. Something about seeing this shadow like cast behind me scared me. I stopped just to see what would happen, and then the shadow grew taller and started to move across the room, and I'm starting to get chills. That's only one of the things that happened. There were also several things that happened to my mom in her own room. Anyway, that's not the story I'm telling, at least right now. Home alone very often because my mom worked all the time, and I didn't have a car at this time. I was maybe around 15, maybe 16, and I did have friends that had cars, but I did not have a car. So oftentimes I would lock myself in my room. At this stage, I was already very afraid of being alone. I was terrified of the dark, and I was terrified of ever leaving my room. I was terrified of my mom's room. I wouldn't leave my room just to avoid seeing my mom's room that was across the hall. So this means there was often times where I wouldn't eat and I wouldn't go to the restroom. And there was this one time where I just happened to be alone for a really long time. It got to the point where I had to go to the restroom. Part of the deal when I was alone, because my mom already knew how afraid I was to be there, was that she would always close her door, her bedroom door, when she left and turn off the light. If she didn't do this when she left, then I would muster up the courage to run across the hall, turn off her light and close the door, just because I didn't want to see any activity underneath the door. Like, I didn't want to see any light or shadow activity under her door. And this is really, really important. When I tell you I was paranoid about this, I was adamant about this, and I always, if I was alone, I made sure the door was closed and I think you know where this is going. This time that I was alone and I was in my room for majority of the day, it got to the point where I needed to leave the room and I needed to go to the restroom. And I just remember that I had peeked out of my bedroom before, trying to get the courage to go to make sure her door was closed, her light was off. It was. And so went back in my room, grabbed my phone, was talking myself up to go to the restroom. I just didn't want to see her room. And of course, when I go back out to walk to the restroom, I freeze because I look across and her light is on. Immediately, I retreat back to my room. I start talking to myself, telling myself, maybe I mistook what I saw. But I knew in my gut, and I knew because I checked, that the light had been turned off and it had been off, and now it is on. I don't know how much time passed, at least another hour, that I just hid in my room. Instead of fight or flight, I froze. I just froze in place and I was too scared to move. I started praying. I had a rosary I always had on me and just started praying. Well, eventually, because I knew my mom wasn't going to be home, nobody was going to be home. My aunt worked with my mom at the time, and so nobody was home next door. I knew that I was going to be alone for a few more hours. I eventually mustered up the courage again to, at the very least, I wanted to confirm that what I saw was true, and if somehow I was able to run to the restroom and then just come back, get that done. But then when I opened my door, I now see her doors slightly open. The light is still on and her door is slightly open. With this, I knew that I knew that something was happening. So once again, retreat back to my room. At this stage, I'm freaking out. Like, even talking about this, it freaks me out. Eventually, fast forwarding through the time, it felt like hours were passing. So the rooms were across from each other and the staircase was next to my room. So I thought maybe if I just am able to turn the corner and run down the stairs and leave the apartment, that's what I'll do. I'm just too scared to be here. And so I open the door again, and now her light is off again and the door is still open. And I just see a shadow, a short shadow, standing in the crack of the door. I freeze. I freeze. When I say, I still get chills talking about this. I tried to tell myself, maybe it's something hanging on the door, maybe it's this and that. I had checked after my mom was finally home. Nothing was hanging on the door, and nothing is in the view of the door. Like, you can't see anything from her bedroom from the view of the door. I don't know what that was, but I do. At this stage, I can't be at the apartment anymore. I'm frozen in fear and I can't even get myself to run down the stairs. I go back in my room and I call a friend of mine who had a car and I tell her, you need to come pick me up. I'm scared and I can't be here. We had a bad habit of always leaving our door unlocked because my aunt was next door, and just in case they were in and out of our apartment all the time, our door was always unlocked. So I tell my friend, the door's unlocked, come get me, go straight up to my room, come get me. So being a good friend, she comes, she goes up the stairs, I'm ready to go. First thing she says is, where did your sister go? Grab your sister. And I said, no, I'm alone, I'm not taking care of her today because I babysat very often, we can just go. Then she tells me the words that have haunted me to this day. She says, but I just heard her laughing. I heard her laughing while I was going up the stairs. Once again, this isn't the first thing and it's not the last thing that happened in that apartment. That apartment turned my stern, logical stepdad into a believer of things beyond explanation.
I can't imagine being in a situation where you're in your own home and you are that frightened and feel almost trapped, where you have to stay in your bedroom and you can't leave to do basic things like eat or go to the bathroom. That must have been a horrifying experience. On top of that, there must also be that like self-doubt feeling when she realizes something is not as she thought it was, where you're questioning if you really saw it the way it was before, if something actually changed, and you're like questioning your own sanity at that point. I'm sure that's not a good feeling. The combination of that plus the fear, I'm sure it's probably a pretty traumatic situation. But then to have her friend basically confirm everything by saying she heard her sister when her sister was not there is crazy. I feel like that would almost, it'd be like so hard to tell how that made me feel, because I'd be like relieved that I wasn't crazy, but then also horrified because that means all the scary things that I was witnessing were real. So it's kind of like a backward situation. It's like you don't know whether to be relieved that you're not crazy or horrified that something awful is potentially going on in your home. It sounds like that is a past situation though, so I'm hoping she's not dealing with that kind of a thing anymore, but an absolutely frightening experience to deal with at such a young age. Our next TikTok is by the user Your Mom's Chest Hair 666. Some of these usernames, man, they're wild. She tells us about her now husband's old haunted house.
So, I have two instances that were really creepy. And, alright, so this happened back in 2011 when my husband and I first started dating. And I want to say it was like about a month into our relationship. He was moving out of the duplex that he had shared with his roommate. And by the time that I went over there, like the house was already the duplex was was completely empty. So the first instance, the couch was still in the living room. And we had went out to dinner, and then we went back to his place, sorry. And we were laying on the couch and we were just talking and stuff, and we were watching a movie. Yes, we were watching a movie. And so the living room faces, you can see into the small hallway, and then you could see directly into his bedroom. So the house was pitch black, and it was just the blue light of the movie. And I was facing, I was a little spoon. I kid you not, I don't know where, it just started getting chills down my back. And I was like, I feel like there are eyes on me right now. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to spook myself. Every time something creepy happens to me, I try to not acknowledge it, because I've always been told that if you acknowledge it, you give it more power and stuff. So I just completely ignored it, and I faced him, and then I forgot, we didn't spend too much time there afterwards. We kind of just dipped out, and then I went home. So the second time that we went back over there, also we had dinner again, and then we went back to the place, and by that time it was really empty, and his room was completely empty. So in the room, he has a double door wooden closet, and those specific type of closets, there's a plastic piece attached to the bottom where it slides, and if that plastic piece gets detached, then the doors can literally swing like this. So when we were in the room, there was a lamp inside of the closet, and the lamp was just on, and the closet was pretty much this much opened, so you can kind of see into it, but not really. And the other door was closed. Or no, sorry, it was slightly open too. And we were hanging out, and afterwards we took a smoke break, and my back was facing his closet, and I was like looking at him, and we were just talking. I heard cocoon. So like those doors are really heavy. You have to like act like physically push them in order for them to swing, right? And when I heard that, I felt chills going down my spine. And this literally happened within seconds. When I looked at him, his face, like his eyes were super wide, and he was like, "We need to leave now." And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "No, we need to go. Like, go." I had never like rushed out of something so quickly. We dipped out, we get in the car, and we are literally like 10 minutes from where we were at, and I was like, okay, what happened? And like we're getting close to his nana's house at that point, and he was like, I don't want to talk about it, like I'm really, really scared. And I was like, okay. So we finally like pulled over in front of his nana's house, and I was like, okay, you need to tell me what happened because I feel scared. And he was like, okay. So when we were talking, he's like, I looked into the area that you can kind of see into the closet, and he was like, I saw a hand. It was black, and it had long nails, and it reached out from the closet door, and then it slowly like went back inside. And when it went back inside of the closet, something pushed the doors super hard. And I was like, oh. And he was like, I have never felt so scared in my life. And he's like, I've like experienced paranormal stuff. He's like, nothing like that. Like that was scary. And then I proceeded to tell him about what I had experienced prior to that incident. And we were just like really spooked, and we never went back there. I think like I'm not sure if like his roommate was the one who like kind of finished moving everything out or whatever, but yeah, that was really creepy. And then the place that we live now, there have been a couple of incidents. Still, like you just feel like something's watching you, but it doesn't happen as often anymore because I constantly bless my home. But yeah, I just wanted to come on and share my ghost story too.
I think it's so telling that he wouldn't even explain what happened. He just immediately rushed her out of there. Obviously, he was genuinely that terrified and believes that what he saw is 100% accurate. I think that is probably one of the most horrifying things you could see. Like, it's in the list of like top 5 most horrifying things you could see is a hand just kind of gripping around a door frame, not seeing who or what it's attached to. That is absolutely frightening. So I do not blame him for running out of there. And I think it's also just a testament of the fact that she always kind of felt weird vibes and felt like she was being watched. And then towards the end to have something like this happen is crazy. Our next TikTok is with user Alexandra Dolores Brown, who shares a story from a time in college. She saw a woman in her dorm room.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
10 years ago, I was playing varsity volleyball at the University of Maryland, and that in itself was a horror story, but my teammates and I would go every single weekend to this bar that was really close to campus, like maybe a 3-minute walk from our dorm. And on this particular night, I was with a teammate who usually would rather go to a house party. And we were only at the bar for maybe an hour before we lost each other. And I assumed that she had gone off to go to a party like she usually would. So I left. And I know that it's not girl code to leave your friend at a bar, but I was 18 at the time and invincible and did not know how to act. And to be clear, she was at a party and she was fine. But I get back to my dorm, which was the top floor of this really old building, And my roommate, who was another teammate of mine, not the person I went to the bar with, she was not there that night. And I don't know if she was with her boyfriend or if her family was in town, but whatever the case, she was not sleeping in the room that night. So I get into bed and eventually I fall asleep, but I wake up a little while later in this weird half awake, half asleep state. And in the corner of my room, I see this woman standing there. And my first thought was, oh, there's the teammate that I lost in the bar. Found her, great. But after looking at her for a little while longer, I realized it wasn't her. My teammate had hair just like mine. And the person I was looking at had this long, dark, straight hair. And she was wearing this sort of hospital gown, it looked like, kind of. And she was covering her face with her hands like she was crying. And if I had been actually awake at this time, I would have fled the room quick and in a hurry. But in this weird state, I just kind of went back to sleep. And in the morning, I chalked it up as a dream. But the next night, my roommate was back. And I think it was a Sunday night, so we had classes the next day. And we got up the next morning, which was the Monday morning. And she started telling me that she had seen something weird in the room the previous night. So I said, okay, well, what did you see? And she said that she had woken up in the middle of the night to see standing right next to her bed a woman with long, straight hair who looked like she'd been crying. And at this point, I hadn't told my roommate what I'd seen because I had fully thought it was a dream. But needless to say, we were really freaked out. But I will say, I didn't get any sort of malevolent or evil feeling from this ghost entity, whatever she was. And for the next year-ish that we lived there, I talked to her a lot, but I never did see her again.
I've said it many times before, but I love these stories where you witness something and then someone else witnesses the same thing. You later converse and find out that you saw the same thing, but neither of you had the bias of knowing it beforehand. I love that. I mean, obviously not great that it happened, that's a little spooky, but it doesn't seem like this spirit was necessarily there to harm them. Honestly, to me, it sounds like she's just kind of lonely and was just hanging out there, which actually makes me a little sad. It makes me feel kind of bad for the spirit because it genuinely seems like she was just there to keep company. A little creepy that she's watching people sleep, but definitely very frightening to wake up and see that because you have no idea what the intentions are, what this thing is, why it's there. But yeah, from an outside and after the fact perspective, it seems like there was really no harm meant. It doesn't seem like there was any real risk of danger in the moment. Our next post is from the user Ash Bass Got Ass. Another interesting one. She tells us a story about a creature she saw when she was 7 years old.
A ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
It is my time to shine. It is my time to shine. So, I have kind of a little bit of a past with the paranormal world. I don't really like to call it that. I like to call it the world of spirits and demons because what I saw was definitely a spirit. It was not a ghost. This was also not an apparition. This was a solid being. You know how people have the term shadow people? Well, this was not even that because I saw a figure. So let me just reverse this. When I was 7 years old, I was used to my older sister, who was 7 years older than me, and my stepdad playing pranks and tricks on me. And one night, just in the middle of the night, I just felt this weird sense that I needed to get up. And I just attributed it to me being maybe thirsty in the middle of the night. I don't know what time it was. It could have been the devil hour. I don't know, 3 a.m. or whatever. But it was very late at night. I woke up and I am still laying down in bed. And I share a room with my older sister. I'm on the top bunk of the bed because we had a bunk bed. She was on the bottom bunk. And I am still laying down. And I just happened to glance over to the railing. So our bunk bed was up against a wall that had a window, and then on this side of the bunk bed was just the rest of the room. There was a wall with a built-in bookshelf and everything like that. And like I said, I'm 7 years old, so I have little teddy bears on the bed and everything. I look over to my right and I see this thing. initially I'm just like, oh my gosh, like why would they be playing a trick on me in the middle of the night? But I thought it was either my stepdad or my sister, because the being was tall enough where I could see their head, their shoulders, and a part of their chest at the top bunk of my bed. So just keep in mind how tall that has to be. I could see this much of them on the top bunk of my bed. And so I was just like, Dad, stop playing around. No response. Still looking at him, and I'm like, what the heck? And then I say my sister's name, stop playing around. Nothing. Now me, as my 7-year-old brain, I'm thinking maybe my eyes are playing tricks on me. So I was wearing glasses by that age, so I'm like, maybe my eyes are truly just playing tricks on me. So I rub my eyes and blink a couple times, thinking maybe it's just my eyes. I'm still laying down at this point, so just keep that in mind. I didn't sit up or anything like that. I'm still laying down, but the blanket's off of me, and I'm like looking over to it. And what I was looking at was like a very skeletal thing. It did have skin over it. It was like a skeleton with a very thin skin over it. It was completely pale white with lots of blue veins all over its face and neck. It had like an old-timey dress that was like kind of like the high neck, like Peter Pan collar type dress with like lace and stuff, but it was very tattered, very dirty. And then where its eyes were, nose and mouth, it was just holes, just completely black holes. But it almost was like as if it was glowing in the dark. So like the white paleness of it was almost like glowing because, like I said, it was in the middle of the night. The curtains were closed, so it's not like I was seeing like a reflection or anything like that. What I was looking at was whatever this was. And so I took a teddy bear and I like put the blanket over my head, and I'm thinking like, okay, what I was seeing is obviously something there. So I take my teddy bear and I throw it at it from underneath the blanket, and it hits the bookshelf that's across from the bed. And then I was like, I said my sister's name again. I called her name out, and then I hear her kind of shuffle around in her bed and move underneath me. And at that point, I'm like, okay, this is definitely not my stepdad. This is definitely not my sister. What is this? And I am still like, what is going on? So I kind of just like lift the blanket up and peek underneath the blanket, and I see a skeletal hand reaching out to me like this. And at that point, I was mortified, I was terrified, and I was so frightened to the point where I actually wedged myself in between the side of the bunk bed and the wall, because I wanted to get away from whatever that was. I didn't want it to touch me, because I'm like, what if it's going to snatch my soul away? I wedged myself, and I kind of like lifted the blanket up one more time, and its hand was resting on the bar of the bunk bed. At that point, I completely grabbed another teddy bear, put it under the blanket, wrapped myself up super tight in the blanket, and started praying and reciting the Lord's Prayer. Because I don't know what that was, but it was not coming after me. And so I fall asleep. The next morning, I get up, and I'm talking to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, there was something in my room. And she's like, what are you talking about? And so I begin to tell her what I saw. And she kind of like had a look of surprise on her face, because she was like, huh? You saw what? And at first I'm thinking maybe she's just gonna, squelch my fears and be like, girl, you were just imagining that. But then she called my sister into the room. And what I was told was that 7 years prior, so like I said, my sister is 7 years older than me. So 7 years prior, when I was still in my mom's stomach and my sister was 7 years old, she saw the same thing in this house that we were living in. How she saw it, though, was that she got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and she looked down the stairwell of our stairs, and she saw something not floating, but walking. And she makes her way down the hallway, but she's still looking down the steps closer to the bathroom. But she's still looking down the steps, and she sees this thing going up each step, like it's walking up each step. And she had told herself that if it reaches the landing of the stairs, I'm running. And it got, right before it got its foot onto the landing, she literally saw its foot hovering over the landing, and she took off down the hallway to my mom's bedroom and like dove into the bed. Obviously my mom woke up and was like, what's going on? And my sister was like, there's something in the hallway. Obviously when my mom looked, there was nothing there. I truly do believe that what me and my sister saw had something to do with the number 7 or the age 7 or something. I don't know. But then several years after this encounter when I was like maybe like 12 or 13. Before we moved away from this house, I actually learned that the previous owner to the house had died in the house. She had died at like 80 some odd years old, and she had not been found in the house. This was a unattended death. Nobody found her for several weeks, so her body was in a state of decay. Not to the point of like skeletal remains, but it was pretty far. And she died in the house alone. And I can just only imagine the kind of pain she must have been in before she passed away. But I think her spirit is definitely tied to that house. And, you know, they always say that children can usually see things way more than adults can. But even me, who has seen things all the way up until adulthood, you know, I'm very intuitive about certain things. I'm very in tune with things around me, very observant. I will say that that was one of the scariest experiences I've ever seen, because I saw a physical being up close to me, and it almost touched me. So, yeah, pretty unbelievable, but it is 100% true. And to this day, it scares me. I have gone to my hometown and driven past that house, and it just always has this weird vibe to it. And yeah, very scary situation for a 7-year-old.
It's so weird to me that her sister also saw this thing when she was 7 years old. What are the odds that they both see the exact same creature at the exact same age? And again, she didn't know about this situation. She found out after the fact that her sister saw the same thing. And I wonder how it must feel to be the mom and be like, oh my God, my second daughter saw the same creature that my first daughter saw 7 years ago. Honestly, if I was the mom, I would be so freaked out. Like, that would genuinely terrify me that my children are seeing this creature. Like, knowing at that point that it wasn't just some crazy dream that my first child had, but it's actually like a thing apparently that is wandering around my house for all we know. I don't know, I'd be pretty concerned after that. But thankfully it, I guess, is a one-time thing, like shows up once when you're 7 and then never shows up to you again. It's best case scenario, besides just not seeing it at all. So, if nothing else, it made for a very fascinating story. Our next TikTok is by the user Eden Abernethy. She tells us a terrifying experience she had at her friend's old house.
Me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I wanted to share this story for a hot minute. I've been watching a lot of these Stitches, and it just, I don't know, it just reminded me of the singular experience I had growing up with the paranormal, whatever you want to call it. I believe I was about in the 10 to 12-year-old range. Growing up, I was best friends with this girl, and I would hang out at her house all the time. It was this old Victorian house, very big, old. It had like a big spiral staircase, and it was on this big piece of property, and the entire neighborhood, which was the neighborhood that I lived in, was built on the land that was originally owned by the family that built the house. So this house was way older than all of the houses around it in the neighborhood, and the street it was on was actually named after the family that built the house as well. So very old house. It always kind of had a little bit of spooky vibes. I don't know if that was just because it was old. Her mom liked to collect older, like, antique things as well. We would go antique shopping all the time. She had like these old dolls, a bunch of like old china decorations, porcelain, like that kind of thing. They always threw really creepy Halloween parties. But yeah, anyway, so I hung out at this house for many, many years throughout my childhood, and I never really had anything weird happen until this one day. We were hanging out at her house. I believe we had been previously talking about ghost things, but I'm not really sure. That could have been afterwards, sparked from this event. Anyway, we were walking up this spiral staircase to go up to her bedroom. And when you are exiting the staircase, you go into the main hallway of the second floor. And if you turn right, her room was down the hall and on the right, but straight ahead was her parents' room. And their parents' room door was open, and there was a window, and the light from the sun was coming in through the window. She walks up first, I walk up behind her. We are looking down the hallway to head towards her room, but we are looking into her mom's room. The door is open. And there is this extremely tall black figure. Looks like a man, has really like long arms, and is like leaning towards us. Now this hallway is like a decent length, so it was still like far away from us, but it felt like it was getting closer because of how it was leaning. It wasn't actually like moving, and we both felt this angry presence wash over us. Like the feeling was anger, and that was the only thing I could describe it as. It wasn't just like an uncomfortable bad feeling, it was anger. And so she walked in first, I walked in behind her. She said she blinked and it was gone. I passed behind her while looking down. As she passed in front of me, it disappeared as she blocked my view. And we both looked at each other and we screamed and we ran to her room, which was in the direction where we just saw this thing, but we just wanted to get into her room. And so something that makes it more real to me is that we both saw it, which at the time we were like, oh my gosh, did we really just see that? Was it like a shadow? Like, you know, did the sun hit our eyes weird? So we went back out into the hallway later and we tried looking and we couldn't see what would have even, like there were no objects in front of the window. There was nothing that would have made that shape. And also it was just like the feeling as well. So the next day we told her mom about it, and her mom's face just went white, and she was just like, I wish you guys wouldn't have told me that. And we were like, what? And she said that about a month earlier, maybe a couple weeks, she had woken up in the middle of the night to go pee, and this is at night, there was no sun coming in through that window. She saw the same tall black figure, angry presence looming towards her, and she said she just put her head down and was like, I'm seeing things, and she just walked to the bathroom, walked back. When she came back into her room, it was gone. So, and that was the only experience I ever had in that house. My friend said that was the only experience that she had. She did say that because the house was so old, there is a possibility that people had passed away in that house. But yeah, we're not sure what we saw, never saw anything like that again, and that's just what happened. Unfortunately, this girl and I are no longer friends. We ended on bad terms, like, for something completely unrelated, years later. But I've always kind of wanted to reach out to her and be like, hey, do you remember this? Like, because it's been so long, I'm like doubting myself, like, did I make this up? But I want to ask her about it because I'm like curious. But anyway, yeah.
I really wonder what that thing was. The fact that her mom also has seen it and then was frightened because she was really hoping that it was just kind of her imagination. Like, she didn't want the confirmation that what she was seeing was real. But honestly, the whole situation makes perfect sense to me because the fact that the house is that old, the property's that old, and it's like, you know, it's like the centerpiece of the town because the land lent itself to the rest of the city to be built. I don't know, it makes perfect sense that there'd be something going on there. I'd be surprised if there wasn't. But regardless, I mean, the fact that it's like they saw what appeared to be a man that's like stretching out towards them and like getting closer, I feel like at first I may just be actually like real life scared because I'd be thinking that maybe it's a person that broke into my house or something, and you know, you see a random man in your home and you start panicking. But for it to also be paranormal, not just a random man, but like a paranormal random man, is also frightening. However, I think I would take a paranormal over a real random man in my home any day. Our next TikTok is with user Brad Deaton Comedy, who tells us about an experience his grandpa had with his neighbor in his haunted house.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go.
My grandfather lived in a haunted house, and I know how crazy that sounds, but every member of my family has a crazy ghost story about that house. I'm going to tell you one of my favorites. Okay, so my grandpa's in this house he grew up in, and there's all kind of crazy shit would always happen there. And one day, his friend comes over. Now, my grandpa is used to crazy stuff happening in this house, okay? He's unfazed by it. But his friend is sitting there at the dinner table with him, and they're just having a conversation. It's just them two. And the friend's name is, we'll call him Fred. And Fred's sitting with his back against a wall in a chair, right? And my grandpa's talking to him. And all of a sudden, my grandpa says that Fred's face just went pale white. And Fred got up without saying a word and just walked out of the house. So next day, my grandpa sees him outside because they're neighbors. He says, Fred, what the hell happened to you yesterday? You didn't even say bye. You just got up and left. You okay? And Fred said, someone was playing with my hair. So as he sat there with his back against the wall, he felt a hand, the fingertips run up through his scalp and grab his hair and pull his head back. And that sends chills down my spine. And if you like this, I'll tell you all the other crazy shit.
The fact that he just left with no explanation whatsoever is crazy to me. I think if something like that happened, I would probably be like, oh my God, I need to tell someone, especially the person that it happened in the vicinity of. But I guess I do understand the idea of being so freaked out that you don't want to even say what just happened because you're afraid of acknowledging it. I guess that makes sense to me, but I mean, when something crazy happens to me, I tell either one of my two best friends or my mom. Although my mom's kind of like my best friend too, so I tell one of my three best friends anytime something happens to me. And for sure, if something like that happened to me, 1, 2, or 3 of them would hear about it. Our next TikTok is by the user Conda97. He shares with us an experience he had as a child in his haunted house.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
I had a few requests on my last video to follow up with some more ghost stories from my childhood. And like I said in my last video, you know, I've never seen anything in particular. I've never seen like an apparition. All of these experiences are just really weird situations that maybe have a rational explanation, but maybe they don't. And I want to give some context on what I'm about to talk about. So I'm about to talk about my childhood home, which, according to anybody who lived there, my dad or my mom, and anybody who visited, this home was not haunted. There was nothing really weird about this house. Everything that I experienced alone. And so for some further context, that house was brand new. It was built on a former nature park, according to my mom. So nobody had lived in it before. There was no history. It was not built on some cemetery, as far as I know. And nothing should have been off with this house. And yet some weird things happened to me. So when I was a kid, I had this uncanny ability to feel when somebody walked in the room. And later on, this sort of like evolved into me being able to feel other people's emotions, kind of like when there's tension in the air between two people, like that, but with the whole spectrum of emotions. And as a kid, I was always right. I could always turn around if I felt somebody behind me, and my mom would be there just watching me play video games or watch TV or whatever. And as I got older, this feeling started going off, and I would turn around and there would be nobody there. And so I thought, wow, this must have just been, you know, a mechanism of my imagination, and I didn't really think too much of it. Now, as a small child, I always got this bad feeling from the room that was supposed to be my room. And I didn't think too much of it, but every time that I would spend the night in there, I would have the most horrific nightmares where I would be mostly lucid, but the nightmares would always take place in that room or in some weird spatial area where there were just a bunch of like demons and monsters and whatnot trying to kill me. And when it was a more lucid dream, it would always take place in that room. And I would never really see anything in particular, but it would like take over the environment around me. My toys would come to life, and they would be up to no good, and they would be trying to hurt me. So throughout my childhood, I began spending the night in my mom's room with her while she slept, and this lasted until I was about 12. And for the most part, that took care of that issue until it didn't. The first weird scenario happened when I was about 9 or 10, and my mom had bought me this toy that was like a little spy suitcase that you could press a button on the handle and it would shoot like these 2 darts, and inside the suitcase it had a bunch of like toy spy gear. And one of the toys inside was this motion detector that would shoot like an invisible laser across the room, and anything that walked through it would set it off and like an alarm would beep. And the minute that I set up this toy, it kept going off. And notably, I set up this toy in my room. I wasn't afraid of my room when it was broad daylight. And so I would play in there sometimes because that's where all my toys were. And this thing would go off every 5 or 10 seconds. And it kind of annoyed me because I was like, great, my toy is broken. And so I experimented by going in the other rooms of the house and setting it up. And it would not go off unless I walked through it. This thing maybe beeped once or twice in the whole time that I had it set up across the house. And I did this for about 30 minutes, and it was pretty reliable. The minute I went back to my room and set it up, it started going off again. So I didn't think too much of that experience. I thought, okay, well, clearly this toy sucks, whatever, I'm just not going to play with it. The next experience happened when I was about 10 or 11. And I used to be a latchkey kid. So my mom would be at work until about 7 or 8 p.m. and I would be alone in my house. And at this point, I was hanging out in her room and I was watching the TV because she had a TV in her room. And I heard something weird. And so I muted the TV and I listened, and it sounded like it was coming from the little living room that was right outside of her bedroom. But the problem is what I was hearing was my voice. It sounded just like me, and it was saying something, but it wasn't English. It sounded like English, but it wasn't English. If you've ever heard one of those videos where it mimics what English sounds like to non-English speakers, how it's basically gibberish, but it sounds like English, it was exactly like that. And so I get up and I get closer to the sound, and it's getting louder and louder because I'm getting closer to it. And I come face to face with where it sounds like it's coming from, and it just abruptly stops. And I go, wow, okay, that was weird, and I don't really think anything of it. I just go back to watching TV. The final experience took place when I was about 11, and like I said, I was sleeping in my mom's room to get some good sleep. And one night I'm having, a very great night. I'm having some good sleep. However, around 3 or 4 in the morning, I jolt awake. My eyes just immediately go from shut to all the way open, eyelids touching my eyebrows, and I immediately sit up and I'm staring at the doorway that leads into her bedroom. And something is off. I can feel this very weird, I hesitate to call it a dark feeling, but it felt like a sort of like dark energy, as weird as that sounds and as cringe as that might sound. It was a very bad feeling, and I'm staring at this doorway because normally I close that door when we sleep because I've had nightmares of something peeking at me from the doorway, and I just can't handle that. So I'm very shocked to see that I have left the door open, and what's more is that I have left the light on outside because we had a lamp right there in the intersection where the living room met my mom's room. And so for whatever reason, I am just filled with adrenaline. I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea why I'm so panicked, but I am just making eye contact with that doorway. And about a minute goes by and I'm starting to think, okay, this is all in my head. I must have just had a bad dream. I'm going to go back to sleep. When all of a sudden the light does something weird. So the lamp that was outside was one of those lamps where it has a knob that you can twist and the light gets brighter and then it gets brighter and then it gets brighter and then it shuts off. And that's exactly what happened. The light clicked as though something moved the knob and it got brighter. It clicked one more time. It got to the brightest setting and then it clicked one more time and it went completely off. And as soon as it did that, I felt something shift into the doorway leading into the bedroom, and it felt like something was watching me from the doorway. And it scared the hell out of me. I sat there frozen in fear for about 5 or 10 minutes before I finally got the courage to move, and I tried to wake up my mom, and my mom is just dead asleep. I finally get her to kind of roll over and mutter to me, but she doesn't give a damn about what's going on because she's trying to sleep. She's got work in the morning. And so I finally gained the courage to get up and go close the door, and I don't go back to sleep. I just stay awake the entire night waiting for daylight to come. And that's how I know it wasn't a dream and it wasn't sleep paralysis, is because I never went back to sleep. So after that point, nothing in particular really happened anymore. I was pretty much left alone sometime after that, as far as I know. And that's sort of the end of that story. Eventually we moved out of that house and some new owners went into it. And I haven't had any particular experiences like that since, so nothing really followed me to our apartment. It didn't follow me when I moved out of my mom's either. So everything has been great so far. Hope I don't run into any more experiences like that.
I really want to talk about the motion laser thing. That is literally like ghost equipment. I'm sure all of you, if you're watching this video, are well versed enough in the paranormal world to know that like there's legit ghost equipment that is like that, where it's just lasers on a wall and you can either see like disruption in the pattern because something's walking in front of it, and then there's also the kinds where it's like a laser and if it catches motion then it makes a noise. That is very similar to what he's talking about here, and obviously his thing is not intended for that kind of use, but it still can work the exact same unintentionally. So to me, that's the thing that stands out most about this, is like he kind of unintentionally caught ghosts. Like, it's like he had his own little paranormal equipment without realizing it. And I think like that to me is the most fascinating thing about this story. Our next TikTok is with user Mrs. Lindsay Cook. She tells us about a shadow man that she would see in her home.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So, I don't know why I have the hardest time telling this story. Like, I've tried to tell this story so many times, and it just, like, I don't know. I guess I'm just too freaked out by it. But this is a super long story, but I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. So, I used to live with a friend and her mom. And her mom used to work for a town, like a small town, as like the town hall. And the town that she worked for, the town hall was originally an elementary school. Elementary school burned down, blah, 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 blah. I heard stories about things that were in the school, whatever. I never had any experiences there myself. My friend, she would always tell me that she has an attachment, and that when she would be driving home at night, he would sit in her passenger seat of her car and just stare out the front, or he would stare right at her as she's driving. And she used to tell me this all the time and about how it freaked her out and everything. And we ended up naming the entity whatever. I know now you're not supposed to do that, but we did it anyways. His name was Tony. So when this friend and I split, like she went to go live somewhere else, I lived wherever, and my now husband moved in with us, or with me, things started to happen. So and he's a police officer, so he usually worked night shift, and I had a golden retriever. I said had. I have a golden retriever. His name is Parker, and I had just gotten Parker. Like, he's like puppy. I think he was like maybe 6 months old at this point, so I didn't just get him, but I've had him. So my husband and I are living in this house, and it's older, and one night we're laying in the bed, and I start hearing what sounds like the kitchen sink turning on and turning off and turning on and turning off. And I shake my husband awake. I'm like, do you hear the kitchen sink? He's like, yeah. So we go and we look, it's completely dry. Next, I started to see Parker doing weird things. So he would stand in our bedroom right by the front, like the door, and he would stare up at the ceiling right outside of our bedroom door, staring up and watching something moving on the ceiling. And then he would get in the bed with me. And keep in mind, I'm alone a lot. Like, my husband is not there. My family lives about an hour away. I'm no longer friends with this person. Like, I'm completely alone. Yeah. So, and I'm pregnant at this point as well. So it was a really rough thing to go through by myself. So he would get in the bed with me, Parker would, and he would stare at the ceiling, and it's like he's watching something moving on the ceiling. I even have video of him doing this. I can submit that later. And then it progresses, and it really was like stages. So it would just be like, you'd hear it, the dog saw it, then I'm hearing it more, then I'm seeing it. It was all stages, which you hear a lot with like this kind of thing. So fast forward, I'm laying in the bed one night, and I'm hearing what sounds like our living room couch being lifted and dropped, or being pushed against the wall, or being slid across the room. Like, it was extremely loud and extremely terrifying. And then you go out and you look, and there'd be nothing that was moved. If everything be completely normal. Then it went to, I'm laying in the bed, and the way our bedroom was faced, so when I'm laying in the bed, I can see our TV, which is right next to our door, and then right outside of our bedroom is the bathroom. And the bathroom to the living room is a complete straight line. So if you're coming from the living room into the bathroom, you have to pass through the bedroom door so I can see you. So I'm laying in the bed, and out of the corner of my eye, I'm watching TV, and out of the corner of my eye, I see what looks like somebody walking into the bathroom. And immediately my eyes float to it, and I'm watching, and then it goes right back. And it's a extremely tall thing, and he has what looks like a baseball cap on, and he's dark, like black. But like black, because like the lights were off. So I could see him black, moving. And the other thing that got me is in his stride, you could see his hands. In his hands, his fingers were long, like long. And that's what freaked me out. Look, hold on. First of all, seeing somebody in your house is going to freak you out. But the fingers, that's what really, really solidified to me, like, what the hell. So I'm watching this, and it happens like 3 or 4 times, like walking back and forth. And eventually I get the courage, and like whenever I don't see him anymore, I get the courage to get Parker and get the keys, and we go to my mom's, and we drive an hour away to go stay at my mom's. And it takes me a while to come back to the house and stay the night by myself again, but eventually I do. And it's quiet for a while. And then one night my husband comes in, again, he works night shift. He comes in, and we're laying in the bed, we're trying to go to sleep. And for some reason, I'm like trying to go to sleep, but for some reason I just open my eyes, and my eyes go to like the door of our bedroom, and our door is like creaked open, but behind the door I see this tall, dark black, long, skinny, nasty thing standing behind our bedroom door. And I scream and I wake my husband up and there's somebody in the room, da da da. Rightfully so. Think there's somebody in our house. My husband gets up, he doesn't see anything. He's like, babe, you're probably just middle of a dream, you're fine. And I'm like, no, this is not middle of a dream. I was awake. Like, this is not the first time that something like this has happened. Like, this is not normal. And he believed me, but I guess it's just hard for him to like comprehend what I was going through. So then next, lying in the bed, and for some reason it was always me. Like, it was always something on me. And I think it was because me and this friend that I was with, we wouldn't antagonize it, but we named it, and she would egg into it, and I would too. We're like, oh, it's probably Tony, which probably didn't help. So anyway, so the final thing that ever happened, we were laying in the bed, my husband and I, and I'm trying to go to sleep, and there's a window right by my side of the bed. And I hear sirens outside, like police sirens or ambulance sirens. And immediately my eyes open and my eyes just gravitate to the window. And I see this thing standing the corner of my bed, leaning down, staring at me. And before, whenever it's like far away, like you can't like get like any facial features or anything like that because it's too far. But this thing is leaning at me and it has no face. Like, it's just complete black. There's not even like the print of like where like a nose would be like for like a mask or something. It's just black. And I fling myself over my husband, like fly across the room. And I throw myself in the corner of the room, and I am ballistic. I am screaming, I'm crying, I'm shaking, and I'm like yelling at my husband, like, Michael, get up. And he said that in the moment when he opened his eyes, he saw it too, still standing there. And that was like his solidifying, wow, this is real. So we ended up going to his family's house. And they're pretty religious people, and so they have lots of Bibles. So we ended up getting a Bible for our bedroom, in our living room, in our baby's room, because I was pregnant at that time. And we never had another problem. So I don't know if it just got tired of us, or if it was the Bible that did it. I want to believe it's the Bible that did it. Or I don't know if it went back to my friend or whatever, but she would tell me that the place that they ended up moving into, a ladder ended up falling off the wall one time, and they would just see stuff everywhere. And I had stayed in their house one time before everything, and that house does have very, very, very weird vibes. I felt like I was being watched the entire time, and at that time I didn't know that there was anything like that had happened on the land and everything, but it is a very scary place to live. But yeah, that's it.
Being home alone and being in your room, which like to me, my room is my safe space. So being in my safe space and being home alone and just seeing a random man shadow figure strolling past my bedroom door, not once, but twice, would be one of the most horrifying things I can imagine. Like I've said before, usually my first thought would probably be that it's a person that broke in. But from the way she's describing it, it seems very clear right off the bat that it is not a real person. So just seeing that and knowing that a different threat, obviously, because it's not a person that can harm me in a traditional sense, but seeing that and knowing that there is this thing in my home, and it, technically defies certain laws of physics and stuff, it can probably go through my walls or whatever. It can be anywhere at any moment, and I wouldn't leave my room. I'd be so scared at that point. I would just be sitting in there waiting for my husband to come home, and I don't think I'd be sleeping. I just have such a hard time being home alone anytime after that. It makes me like really uncomfortable. to think about. I will say I am very happy that she was able to see this thing again and point it out to her husband. I'm very happy for her that even though he never experienced it, he believed her anyway. But then I'm also happy that she was able to like get him to see it, that like he was able to catch it real quick before it disappeared. Like the satisfaction of being like, see, I told you, would be immaculate, that's for sure. I mean, I'm glad that it seems to be gone. It's really weird that it's like they just had to put Bibles in their house, then all of a sudden it's gone. But yeah, like, I don't know, to me that makes it seem like it was some kind of a negative thing, that it was affected by the Bibles. But I don't know, like it didn't seem like it was actually trying to physically harm them in the moment, unless it was just kind of like showing up to freak them out and was going to ramp up to that eventually. So in that case, I guess it's good they got on it right away and found a solution before anything worse happened. Our next TikTok is with the user Reagan Savannah, who tells us about a weird situation that's occurring in her apartment after subletting.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I had to go out of town for work, and I was gone for a total of like, I want to say like 8 months at the time. Obviously I didn't want to pay for my rent whenever I was gone, so I decided to get a sublet. Like, just disclaimer, I'm not blaming her for this. This could not have anything to do with her, but I'm just stating what I know. So anyway, so there's weird energy. I'm trying to just ignore it for the most part and not really think much of it, but I am, you know, I am very sensitive to energies and very sensitive to spirits and stuff like that. So have been for a while, but I haven't ever felt anything in my house. I've only, you know, it's only been like weird experiences out in the world. But anyway, get back. It just feels weird. Like there's just something off about the entire apartment. But mainly, the main part where something's off is in my living room. I don't know, but like on that side of the house, it just feels dark. And I couldn't figure out why, or still don't really know why. I started looking at my cameras in the apartment just to see if there was anything weird or like off that was happening, or, you know, just like the basic paranormal things you would look for, of like things moving or like voices or whatever. And I was back for probably like, I don't know, I was back for probably like 3 months, maybe 4. And there was one time where I was talking to my dog and I had just given her a treat. She was eating, and I didn't hear anything while filming her eating her little carrot. And I played it back. There was a moment where she just stops completely and stares right next to me like someone was there, which she's been doing more and more since we've gotten back to the apartment. I think that's when I asked her, like, is it good, just to get her to, like, you know, distract her. And in the video, when I watched it back, I heard a whisper, and I listened to it over and over again. And I don't want to like put out what I think it says. I kind of want you to listen and like let me know what you think it says. But I have my opinions, and I'll share in the comments. But same day, I'm going to get ready for work, and this is maybe like less than an hour after the video. So I'm already like, you know, hyper aware of something going on. So I start getting ready, and I'm in my room doing my makeup, and like thought I hear things, but of course I feel like I'm being paranoid at this point. There's this one point where I'm getting ready and I swear I heard something, and honestly I'm just so curious at what's going on in my apartment at this point that I'm like, let's go back to the security cameras, let's see what we can see or hear what we can hear, and then just kind of like go from there. Like, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it was just like a one and done, but like, no, I feel like this thing wanted my attention. I decided to wait to like watch anything back until I'm out of the apartment and I'm like in my car, headed to work, whatever. And so I get in my car and I put my phone on, you know, to the car, trying to figure out like what we can hear through the car speakers. I start playing it and like everything's like normal, fine. You can hear me kind of like fumbling around in the back, but it's nothing like, I'm not talking, there's no voices, I'm not talking to anyone, I'm not on the phone, nothing. I'm listening and I'm driving along and I'm like, all of a sudden, and it was like unmistaken, I hear a woman's voice say something. And again, I don't want to put it in your head of like what it is, so I would rather like you just let me know in the comments if like what you hear for both of these videos. I've dealt with spirits before, but I've never had to like get them out of where I live, and so this was new for me, new territory. So I, you know, post it and I'm like, friends, help, I think there's a spirit and I don't know if it's a happy one in my apartment. So, you know, I'm getting comments and like multiple people were like, get some sage, which luckily I already had, walk around the house, just let this spirit entity, whatever you want to call it, let it know that it's your home and you have to like tell it to get out. And so I look like a crazy person doing this in my apartment. So since I saged it, I haven't really heard anything since, but like I still feel a presence. Like one of my best friends stays over a lot and they'll sleep on the couch, and he was saying like he could feel in the middle of the night like something there, and he was like, I was up almost all night, like, he was like, I was in and out of sleep all night trying to figure out like what's going on. I didn't tell him about this because I didn't want to freak him out, and then whenever he said it, I was like, okay. I feel like at this point I'm just kind of living with whatever it is. As long as it stays neutral, we're good. Like I can coexist with whatever it is. I feel like since then it's been better, but I definitely still feel it. It, you know, feels a little weird every now and then, a little dark every now and then, but as a whole, it does feel better. Anyway, I'm gonna put the video up next, so let me know.
Is it good?
This is why I always say to be so careful about who you let into your space and let into your energy field, because even if that girl was so sweet, like had no intentions of doing this, no funny business, nothing, you don't know what people just like have attached to them and that they bring with them without even realizing it. I will say that is just also a risk of like moving into a new space. Like you never know who was there previously, what they've left behind, and what you're gonna have to deal with. Fortunately, it seems like I've gotten pretty lucky with that in all my years of moving around and stuff. But I mean, to be honest, I haunted my childhood home by messing around with Ouija boards and ghostly shenanigans by myself and with friends. And I do frequently mentally apologize to the family that moved into that house, and I really hope that they're not dealing with it. Clearly playing with things like that was a mistake. However, what are you gonna do? We can't take it back. So like knowing that I, you know, messed around with that kind of stuff, haunted my house, and then we moved and now someone else is moving in, or that was 5 years ago, but someone else moved in. So just the fact that I literally have personal experience with having done that, unfortunately, I'm sure it happens way more often than we think. Be very careful who you let into your energy and your spaces. Our next TikTok user, Jess Laffy, who tells us about a little ghost girl her her brother, and her dad all saw.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
I swore I'd never be on TikTok, put my face on TikTok. I just have it to watch videos. I'm not a content creator, so, but I had to jump on this trend because it's just so up my alley. So let me preface by saying I'm a behavioral scientist. I am very science-minded. I'm still not totally convinced that ghosts are like departed souls or whatever. There may be a physics explanation, but I definitely believe that there are things that happen that we can't explain. And one of those things happened when I was around 14 years old and continues until today, as far as I know. So when before I was born, my parents moved into this 100-year-old tiny little farmhouse in rural Missouri. Shortly thereafter had me and then had my brother 5 years later. Around the time that I was like 13, 14, they started realizing that we had outgrown that space. And so started building a 4-bedroom house on the same property just down across the field. Because my family have always been like mostly manual laborers and have always done like, work with their hands essentially. My family built the house themselves. And so it was mostly my dad, my grandparents, some uncles and cousins that came over to help. And pretty much as soon as the walls started going up, things started happening. Nothing ever happened in the old farmhouse, but as soon as they started building the new one, stuff started going on down there. And even whenever they were building it, as soon as the walls went up, my cousin started refusing to come and stay working on the house after dark. Because they all had jobs, they would do the work like before and after work, and so sometimes into the night, and he would leave as soon as it started getting dark because he just said there's something wrong with the house, like something's weird. They kept hearing banging, things would get moved, and we all just kind of thought he was being a sissy and like he was just dumb. But turns out he could have been onto something. So I have so many stories of, just little things, like things being moved, things going missing and then turning up weeks later in the same place that they had gone missing from, things like that. But I'm pretty much just going to tell like the big heavy hitters, and I might do like a part 2 or something later. So as soon as we moved in, my brother didn't really love his room. We had all like picked out our own like bed and bedding and even had like murals and stuff on the walls. And so it was like just really weird that he never wanted to spend any time there. He never wanted to sleep in there. And so, we had kind of just chalked it up to like, it's a change. It's, he's kind of a sensitive kid. Maybe he's just like kind of struggling with that transition. But he started sleeping on the couch in the living room, would never sleep in his room. And so one night, after he had done this, for a few weeks, one night, and at this point he's 9 or 10, so like way beyond the point of like wanting to do this, he asked me if he could sleep in my room with me. I'm like, yeah, I guess, like, yeah, that's fine, like, sure. So that night, and I'm trying to like talk to him, I'm like, big sister, like, is it just like, do you miss the old house, like what's going on? And so he ends up telling me that the night before, when he was asleep on the couch, he thought he saw something. And so he sits up on the couch and like looks down the hallway, and he sees a little girl walking down the hallway and turning like toward my room. And so he wanted to stay in there with me because he was scared, but he was also scared for me that like something was going to happen to me. And at this point, again, I'm like complete skeptic. I don't believe in ghosts. I like adamantly, there are no monsters under the bed kind of thing. I've always kind of been that way. But I'm just trying to like reassure him, like, it's going to be fine. It's fine. You're okay. Like, I'll keep you safe. Yada, yada, yada. So then literally 10, 15 minutes later, as we're having this conversation, he points out the window and I turn and look, and there's a little girl sitting in the tree right outside my window. It was one of the most surreal, weirdest experiences of my life. And as you like, if you think about like ghosts in like movies and stuff, how they're kind of like always glowing, like a like just like casting light around them, almost like a candle, or like a ball of light. It wasn't like that. She wasn't solid, but she she was light enough that I could see her, even though it was dark outside, but like she wasn't casting light around her at all. And it wasn't like you immediately like look toward the light because she was so bright. It was just like she was light enough that I could see the shape of her face and like the buttons on her dress and like things like that. Anyway, like we saw her for like a split second and immediately started screaming. So my parents run in. Of course, by the time they get there, like she's gone. Like at some point she has just like evaporated. And my mom, who is to this day like very Christian, evangelical, super religious, starts kind of trying to explain it away. Like, you know, oh, you guys, like, it's just been such a big change. And like, you know, it was probably just the leaves and the wind and, you know, and all of this stuff. And my dad is just quiet. He just doesn't say really anything. But before they leave, he just says like, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And leaves. So the next day, I'm talking to my dad. I'm like, at this point, like I am 14, maybe close to 15 years old. Like I'm trying to have this like rational discussion with him where I convince him that like, I'm not crazy. Like we both saw it. It was absolutely real. Like, why don't you believe me kind of thing. And he just looks at me and he says, I do believe you. I know it's real because I've seen her too.
Again, with the corroborating story from a person who had absolutely nothing to do with the first situation. I just love it. Like, to me, it is solid proof that there is something going on. Someone else witnessed the weirdness, and I love it. I love it. I really do wonder, though, like, what was she doing there? Why is she in that tree? And like, what's the reason for showing herself to people? Our final TikTok is by the user HoneyishTats, who tells us about an experience she had in the middle of the night.
Tell me a ghost story.
Okay, I have a few stories. I made a video a while back, but I deleted it because I got self-conscious about the way I tell stories. Anywho, one of the stories that really stood out for me was my mom went down this rabbit hole about Gloria Trevi. If you aren't familiar with Gloria Trevi, she's a famous Spanish artist. She sings, and she was involved in like trafficking. She was trafficking. Anywho, my mom went down this rabbit hole, and one night I was sleeping in her bed, and I was just on my phone doing my little thing, you know, scrolling, and she was watching one of the interviews of Gloria Trevi and like the conspiracies behind her. Look into it. I promise you it's fucking wild. Or maybe don't, because of this story you might not want to. So my mom turns off the TV and she turns over and goes to sleep, and we had the light on because our house is really haunted. Like, we just kind of, wherever we go, we experience things. Oh, I got food on my glasses. But anyways, she turns over and she's fast asleep. She's snoring at this point, and I'm still on my phone. The door, I can't remember if I think it was cracked open. Normally we would close our bedroom doors. I have to sleep with the door closed because of experiences that I've had in the past. And I started getting sleepy, so I put my phone away and I start slowly drifting into sleep. I was still awake though. And I heard what it sounded like a child laughing, a girl laugh. It was like, like, it was different. It wasn't like my sisters. I have 2 other sisters, and it wasn't my mom. I looked over at her immediately. It freaked me out. It caught me off guard, and I like sat up really slowly because I don't want to wake my mom up. And I look over at her. I like almost kind of hovered over her, and that she was knocked out. She was snoring, knocked out. And then I was like, that was so weird. I was like, what if it's one of my sisters trying to prank me? You know, like, what if they're on the floor crawling alongside the bed, like just trying to spook me? So I like get up and I like look all around the bed, nothing. And I just kind of sat there and I was like, weird. I know I heard it. And I just laid down, and as soon as I did, my mom was like, what's wrong? She still had her eyes closed, and I was like, Mom, were you laughing? And she's like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. I swear I heard a laugh, but I looked at you and it didn't sound like your laugh. And she's like, I was having a funny dream. So I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. I go to sleep. And then the next morning, and of course, classic mom move on her part, the next morning she was like, Jessica, eso es lo que pasó anoche. She was like, this is what happened last night. And she said that in her dream, that she was asleep, and in her dream a voice was telling her, Reza al Padre Nuestro. I don't really know the translation for that, but it's a prayer. And so she started praying it. And then the voice, which is, we call it like her guardian angel. I know it sounds crazy. There's a story behind it. And then the voice is like, no, rézalo más fuerte. It said, no, pray it stronger, harder, you know? And she's like, okay. And she starts. And then right there, so here's our bed, right? And then at the foot of the bed, she had her giant TV. She said a girl started crawling out of the screen. Kind of makes me think of The Ring. But anyway, so this girl started crawling out of the screen and coming towards my mom's side. And it gives me chills right now because that's where I heard it come from. Like, it sounded like it was on the ground coming from my mom's side of the bed. And the voice was like louder, like my mom's inner guardian or whatever told her louder. And then it made the girl go away. And in my mom's dream, she was scolded, and it was like, don't look into that. You have no business knowing about that. You're calling out that energy. So if you look into the Gloria Trevi conspiracies, it has a lot to do with, like, I don't know too much about it, but I know with the trafficking, and then there's a lot of conspiracies about sacrificing a lot of these children. But yeah, that was one of them. That one was really vivid and really scary. I couldn't sleep well for weeks after that because I could just hear the laugh. It was so vivid. It was so real.
It's so interesting to me. Something's like telling her mother to essentially like pray harder. Like, I wonder what it was that is telling her this, that, I don't know, like, the whole situation to me is so weird and hard to understand. To me, what I'm getting from this is it seems like it wasn't her mom who was doing the laughing, and her mom was just like fessing up and like pretending it was her to not cause any commotion as she's trying to be rid of whatever this thing is in the middle of the night. I don't know. The whole situation seems so weird to me, and I feel like maybe I'm just not understanding it properly, but I've watched this video multiple times and I'm like, it seems like there is just something that was almost like threatening her mom. It felt like it was honestly a very dangerous almost situation. It just seems like she attracted whatever she was researching and talking about and kind of afraid of. I don't know. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this one and what you took from this story specifically, because I feel like it is a little convoluted. But that is all I have for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on any of these stories I shared with you today. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, and I will pop a couple suggestions on the screen for you to watch another one of my videos. Please click the subscribe button down below, turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Time. Please check out my Instagram and TikTok where I post special effects makeup looks. And again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week. Bye. I love you. Yes, you do.